The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Thank you for registering for our webinar. Today's topic is shopper research. More specifically, we want to talk about how category insights that you gather through research can help you cut through the issues of memory recall and information clutter. We will start with an overview of why shopper insights drive your category management strategy. Then we will talk about the macro view of your category information and about how it relates to the more tactical activities. We will discuss the physical implications of our memory and how it affects the research process, and talk about in-the-moment research methodologies that can help you addressing them through some real-life examples. We will close with a few practical considerations and a list of a couple of things that we want you to take away from this discussion. I think we should probably take about 40 minutes, and we'll leave a couple of minutes for questions if you have any. Moving along, let's start with a quick overview of just what makes shopping research so essential. It really is all about its subject. The moment of shopping is crucial to any business. No matter how successful you are at building your brand equity, creating awareness, driving your customers to the shelf, if they didn't buy your product, there'll be no payoff on your investment, no payoff on your marketing, and you will not be able to build any loyalty to build your future success. The store is a unique environment. It's the place where all the different marketing activities meet and compete with each other. It's very similar to a real life. It's not always somebody who is the loudest who wins the battle. You can't always buy your way to beat your competition at the shelf. What you need to do instead is to be efficient and to find the right tone of voice to talk to your shopper so that you can persuade them to buy your product, facilitate your success, and ultimately save a lot of money and make your investment so much more effective. What you as the category managers and we as researchers need to ensure is that your understanding of your shoppers is always up to date and covers such key areas as why people shop your category, what happens when they shop your category, and what influences them. No two shopping trips are ever alike. We need the scale and the precision in understanding them. It is sometimes hard to get both at the same time. Let us start with the scale. To learn how many shoppers bought your category on the weekly stock-up trip to a supermarket versus how many bought it on their commute to work from a convenience store, we tend to use quantitative research. It's typically large scale, tends to be online, it's usually quantitative. This approach is very similar to a U&A study in a consumer research. It forms the basis for your strategy, for building your brand, for building your programs, and in this case, for building your category management. We usually describe the last few shopping occasions and try to capture all the important milestones of such trips, as well as what influences product choice, and to quantify them, which would give you a snapshot of what people shop for, how they shop for it, and what influences them. This works well to understand the triggers, the missions, the whens, and the where, and the destinations, and also the brand choice. The more granular details, however, and these can be actually very important, such as what retailer they shop, not the channel, but what was the retailer, what was the product format bought, what was the type of packaging, and what were the sort of key touch points that were experienced and encountered on the way to the aisle and to the checkout. All these details can actually be forgotten and therefore reported incorrectly. Well, the big question is, This is all great, but does it mean that quantitative recall-based shopper research should be abandoned and is ineffective? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Quantitative research is a very cost-effective way to understand your shopper universe on a macro level. That gives you the very foundation of understanding what your category looks like from the shopper's perspective. If executed correctly, you'll capture the most relevant touch points, might not capture everything, but you will get the key. It will guide your budget decisions and help you invest properly. It will give you sort of a rough idea of how much should be spent on advertising, how much should be spent on various marketing investment like consumer promotions, and then how much do you need to spend in store on your retail programs. Considering that you would want to take the learnings to your retail customers, these studies can also ensure that you have the scale and the reach to address specific issues that are pertaining to these retailers, so that your story that you take to them is much more compelling and relevant, and you can negotiate with them in a better way and tell them something that they need to know about your category in general terms. At the same time, we really need to be aware that there are limitations to these studies, and the limitations are not the online or the quant per se. They are simply ingrained in any recall-based research methodology. They deal with memory, they deal with the information clutter, and the result is they deal with a lack of granularity, and that is especially true for the in-store level. We have done some research and research strategy here, and it indicates that the strength of online quant is actually in capturing reasons for shopping and key elements of the trip, while in situation research is more effective at identifying and assessing in-store touch points. Let's look at it in more detail. I would want to illustrate this with just making you think about how quickly do we tend to forget things. The concept of forgetting is very basic to human psychology. It dates back to the origins of the science. And there's simple models, there's difficult models, there's complicated models. Let's just use a very basic idea of the forgetting curve that allows us to estimate how much information human memory retains with the passage of time. For example, if you're researching a category such as takeaway coffee, where purchases tend to occur on the daily basis, the buyer would tend to remember about 40% of what happened during today's purchase. 1 week later, and when we talk about something that is bought on the weekly basis, such as yogurt, the shopper would be expected to recall about 20% of information. So the amount that is retained is halved. Our memory further deteriorates with the passage of time. When we reach 1 year mark, it is nearly zero. Let's assume we last bought a bottle of sunscreen a year ago. That's quite possible. We're in February. Summer is still quite far away, but that was quite a long time ago. We can probably think about this, and all you can remember, unless you work in this category, is what brand name you bought. Maybe you remember the format, if that was a spray or a cream, and then also the channel where you bought it, perhaps. I don't think you'd be able to remember how much you paid, to be honest with you, and how big was the bottle. You might say this is not a big deal. Let's go back to the yogurt example. We buy it weekly, and although we might forget a lot of the specifics, our shopper will probably provide us with information that covers the last few times he or she bought yogurt, and they can mistakenly attribute them to the last shopping occasion. The memory makes these little details blend into one another. Strictly speaking, this highlights and emphasizes the most relevant and effective touch points, which in and of itself is probably not necessarily a bad thing. The problem is, however, that if you're looking to execute a very specific in-store campaign, you will need to know much more, and you will need to be much more exact about what specifically triggered this or that behavior in store and what needs to be dialed up when you are executing or designing this campaign. You can use another example. Think about a low frequency, high ticket item, like, for example, any white good category. You might argue that somebody who bought a washing machine and paid a lot of money would be able to report on how much research they did, what sources of information they consulted, and probably because it's such a high ticket item, they can probably remember the price paid. But at the same time, the more granular details that are important, such as what was the nature of their contact with the salesperson, how was the contact, how pushy or convincing was the salesperson, was the person knowledgeable, was he or she engaging, these will probably be forgotten. That could also relate to any sort of in-store POS materials used or other promotional activities maybe in place. Would they remember that? It's quite unlikely to be the case. These things tend to be forgotten, at least in our experience and in the experience of a lot of the clients that we've talked to. The bottom line is, no matter which way you look at it, there's no way around our memory. It's a physical concept, and there's nothing we can do to manipulate it. Depending on your category and objectives, it can be a very, very important consideration. Add to this the amount of information that we all process on the daily and even hourly basis, and you will understand just how much of a task it is to demand our shoppers to remember everything that happened in store. Is there a solution? Obviously, there is a solution. Once you've done your quant research, it's a very good idea that you try and bridge the gap between the moment that you are researching and the moment of research itself. If we want to erase the effects of forgetting and information clutter, this is what you do. And then you simply don't rely on the memory anymore, which means you're doing the in-the-moment research. The really great thing about the in-the-moment element is that it ranges from very technical. There's different wearables that you can wear. This can be glasses that do eye tracking and tell you exactly where shoppers look on the shelf and what they look at, as well as just a very simple glasses like Google Glasses, where people wear them in store and you can track how they enter different aisles, what is sort of their direction in store, where they look at, and give you an idea of how this process works. Mobile apps where you put a survey, a quantitative survey on their mobile phone and ask them to activate it when they are shopping for the category in store. They don't have to be technical. They can also be very normal, the very everyday tools that you currently use. And many of them are Qual, such as intercepts, either at the shelf or right at the checkout, Vox Pops, and shop alongs. All of them can work or not work, and it all depends on your objective. There's no plug-and-play solution. Everything needs to be designed and bespoke. The right choice depends on what you're trying to understand, what is your category, which channels you're working with and trying to understand, and of course your budget. The same logic applies here as in the typical research. Qual gets you the whys, Quant gets you the whats and the how manys. Your research partners will always work with you to help you identify the right approach. Let's take a step back and imagine what are the key things that are involved in shopping for a category. Assume we have a buyer, he's a male, and he has a repertoire of shampoo brands that he tends to buy. Brand X is his regular brand. He sometimes buys brand Y, but then he sees the advertising for brand Z, which is a new brand. He is interested by brand Z. So clearly you can see how advertising has been successful in making the connection, and it's clear that the advertising has worked. You've engaged the potential consumer, the potential buyer. You've created awareness, and the person goes and talks about this brand to his friends. He decides to go to the store next time and find the brand in store. Let's just assume, for the sake of the example, that the shopper has time. It's a Saturday afternoon. He goes to a supermarket and he just wants to buy most of his grocery needs for the next week. So he's not really pressured for time or anything. It's really a perfect situation to do product research and browse and find out about new categories. So in and of itself, it's kind of great, and brand Z stands a good chance to be found and to be bought. He reaches the aisle. He reaches the aisle, and suddenly he's interrupted. He sees that brand X is on promo and is featured in the end of aisle display. He looks at it, but he continues to carry. He carries on. He continues. He wants to find brand Z. He enters the aisle, sees the shelf barker promoting a new variant of brand X. Brand X is regular brand. He looks at it because it's the brand he tends to buy. He checks the price. It's not on promo. It's just a new variant. It's not on promo. He puts it back, and then he finds brand Z. He's obviously happy, right? I mean, he came to the store. It's one of the reasons he came to this aisle. He picks up the brand. He reads the front panel. He reads the back panel. Checks the price. He opens the cap, he smells it, he touches it, he feels it. He quite likes the smell, he quite likes everything. He considers it, then he puts it back on the shelf. What he does then is something that was probably activated by the early event in store when he saw that one of his occasional brands was featured on promo. He checks the prices. He checks the price for brand X, he checks the price for brand Y, and he checks the price for brand Z. What happens in the end? He picks up a bottle of brand X and buys it. So even with a powerful pre-store touchpoint as advertising that clearly has worked and a usual brand, the shopper actually changed his mind due to something that happened in store. Now, let's assume that the same shopper was interviewed. We interviewed him online 2 weeks later after the shopping trip, about this particular shopping trip. What did he recall? He was actually quite successful. He recalled the key milestones. He reported seeing the ad as a potential trigger of the shopping trip and one of the reasons he went browsing that day for shampoos. He recalled talking to a friend, another pre-store touch point, not a particularly effective touch point, but that was a conversation with a friend, so it's stuck with his memory, so he recalled it. And then he also told us he reported buying the product on promotion. So all in all, it's quite good, right? Because we know why the person went to the store, and eventually we actually even know what made him buy a certain product. What was missed, however, was something that was a little bit less direct, but clearly relevant for the category and the brand team for brand Z. The shopper interacted with the product, found the product that was advertised. There was quite a lot of connection, explored different aisles in store, and actually responded to a different touch point in store. Didn't lead to anything, but he did see a shelf marker, and the shelf marker did make a connection. Is it a problem? Well, it's a problem because brand Z could have done things differently in response to this information. As it happens, in this particular instance, online quant was complemented with shelf intercepts that actually allowed to get some additional insights into the shopper's behavior. The brand was able to understand that there was an interaction with the product, that he explored more than just the main aisle, and that also there was a response to the shelf marker. What did brand Z done differently was this. It didn't just concentrate on adding promotional support as the online quant, recall-based online quant would have told them, but it also told them to place the product in multiple locations to try and disrupt the shopper, because clearly the shopper was sort of prone to being distracted. So interrupting the shopper in more than just one location and sort of build on advertising, because advertising clearly has communicated strong brand equities and something that was compelling and appealing to the shopper. And also use disruptive point of sale materials, again, to sort of interrupt and strengthen this connection and remind about the brand, and try and take his mind away from pricing, because you can't always compete in pricing. It's sort of tricky, and you don't always want to do that. So this in and of itself gives you an understanding of what in the moment research adds. What it adds is something that allows you to probably forego the most obvious and probably the most expensive also way of swaying the shopper's opinion in store. So this level of granularity is actually quite important. Let's think there's another great facet of the in-the-moment research, and it is that it allows you to generate a great deal of prompted stimuli. It could be photos, videos, interviews with shoppers, as well as unprompted, such as what you've just seen on the screen. It's a video from wearables, from the eye tracking glasses. What it is, and you will probably agree with me, is that it's a great way to actually engage your stakeholders and understand and let them understand what the problems are in store. This is particularly relevant for non-research audiences. Your arguments will be just so much more stronger when your customers see and hear how the customers act in store and what they say about their experience. It makes it so much more powerful and compelling. I would want to spend a couple of minutes talking about a few other business situations where a combined approach between the quant and the in-the-moment research actually produced effective business recommendations. So the first case, it deals with the placement of POS materials in store and on shelf. Unfortunately, I cannot disclose this specific category for some obvious confidentiality reasons, but I really like this case because I think it illustrates a fairly unorthodox learning that we got from in-the-moment research. An FMCG manufacturer launched a TV campaign that was supported by in-store events and campaigns with the POS material. The on-shelf materials were placed at the eye level to maximize the impact on the shopper. But when evaluating the effectiveness of these two campaigns, TV did very well. The awareness was high. In-store fell flat, and the sales didn't happen. That was a big investment. That was quite a big investment, and that was an investment that warranted actually additional research to find out what went wrong and what needs to be fine-tuned. The design approach targeted category shopper in-store through a combination of shop-alongs, so qualitative interviews, just taking the shopper through the aisle and talking through them about how they shop and what they look for, and videos from using wearable glasses. The footage from wearable glasses showed that in-store campaign was missed due to, actually, as it happens, the materials that were placed outside of A, key foot traffic areas, and B, very surprisingly, at the wrong height. That's quite interesting because the shoppers were so keen to find the larger packs that were placed at the bottom shelf that they just failed to look at the promo materials on the shelf that were at the eye level and completely missed communication in most of the times. The category shopper instead was affected by a better executed competitive campaign that was a combination of price reductions with displays outside of main aisle, so sort of a more disruptive, a busier area. This is quite interesting. client used these materials to use these findings to sort of revamp the campaign and replace its materials to a more busy areas of the store, and also to sort of address the idea of it doesn't have to be at the eye level, it has to be a bit lower. Brand tracker data showed actually after the rollout, it showed there was a healthy level of in-store activity awareness and the brand sales went up. So the campaign did rebound and the client was able to sort of recoup his investment. This is quite interesting because the no recall based research would have been able to generate such a specific insight that was really important to be with the shopper at the moment of shopping to see what exactly happened. So I think it's a great example of just how effective and powerful this in-the-moment research can be in addressing your objectives and help you uncover this very specific, very granular, and yet so precise and so effective insights. Let's look at one more example. Here we're talking about the leading manufacturer of medicated mouthwashes. A problem that is very, very popular among our branded clients. There was an increased competition from private labels, and that basically drove their sales down. The approach to deal with this was, again, twofold. There was a large online quant research study that was sort of a UNA, understanding the last shopping occasion for the category. Again, medicated mouthwashers, it's not something you buy every day. So you would encounter all the problems that we've talked about, the problems of memory recall and the problem of information clutter. This was augmented with an app-based shopping task in store that allowed us to understand a bit more about what actually happened on the shelf. So what did we find out? Well, online research, as expected, identified why people shop and also identified what were the key touch points, what were the key sources of information that influenced the shopper. A medicated mouthwash is a very sort of niche and specific category that addresses very specific needs. So it's not surprising that specialists were very reputable and very important as a source of information and a touch point. So we're talking here about dentists, hygienists, and pharmacists. Now, the mobile app showed a very high level of confusion that was created by the poor shelf layout in the main aisle, and also reported that because of that, people had to often talk to the salesperson to help them find the right product. And as it happens, because people who work in stores tend to be sort of pharmacists and tend to be viewed as specialists, they recommended in most cases that the shopper buys the private label. What did the client do? So the client used these results. The shelf layout was poor, so the satisfaction with the shopping experience was also poor. They used these results to negotiate an alternative shelf layout with the channel. In addition to that, because of the importance of sources of information, and because the client wanted to make sure that the recommendation from at the point of sale was for their brand rather than the private label, they employed shelf markers to sort of help and flag out, to call out the benefits of this particular brand. Consequent research reported an improved level of satisfaction with finding and shopping the category in store. As a result, very importantly again, not only did the brand sales go up, the category sales for the pharmacy also went up. That, to me, is critical, because if you want to execute your in-store campaign well, you need to get the support of your trade partners. If you want to get the support of your trade partners, they need to see a benefit for themselves. If you teach them how to sell their category better overall and get more revenue from selling your category, you will be so much more successful at promoting your brand in store. And this, to me, is another great element, another great feature of in-the-moment research. It allows you to keep your three key stakeholders happy. The three key stakeholders for the in-shopping process to me are the shopper, and for the shopper, in-the-moment research provides such tangible findings that it basically improves the satisfaction with the shopping experience and allows the shopper to shop with more ease. The other stakeholder, brand, it's you, it's your brand teams. It improves the findability for the brand and establishes a more clear way for you as a brand to communicate with the shopper through point of sale material and to help them find and buy your brand in store. And finally, to the retail, it increases category sales and improves the in-store experience for the retailer. Let's just to wrap it up, look at a few things that would make your efforts more effective. Basically, the main principle is you need to do some homework, and it probably involves some preparation before you set off on the path to conduct in-the-moment research. Few considerations. Sample size and reach, they tend to be lower than quant, but this is due to a different nature of insights that you generate through in-the-moment research. The more granular, more specific, more, if you want to say, qualitative. Therefore, in-the-moment research should be considered as a companion piece to a wider shopping exploration, to your quant study. It just won't reach all the types of shoppers and all the types of retailers. You will probably hit all your major chains if you want to, but the more channels you want to represent, the more expensive it will get. And there's just some types of shoppers that you wouldn't be able to reach through in-the-moment face-to-face research. You should focus on concentrations, on discussions with the key stakeholders. They will get you an idea of where you need to go, and you always know your priorities anyway. Oops, sorry. Store permissions, just important for almost any type of in-the-moment studies. You need to arrange them ahead of time, either directly or through your research partners. I know there are differences in how this is approached in the UK and France, but the idea is that you just need to do it before you commence any in-the-moment research, because if store staff isn't aware that the research is happening, you will have problems. Cost. In-the-moment research is a bespoke offering, tend to have a slightly higher cost per interview than typical quantitative study, but yet again, the payoff is very different from a from a large scale study. So you get your return on investment in a different way. And also, if you're using a mobile app, not all the stores have Wi-Fi or mobile access. Some of them block it for different reasons. So any data collection through mobile research needs to ensure that your app is offline and they can actually collect the data offline without interrupting the process of shopping, so that it's seamless. Because ultimately what we want is we want it to be purely in the moment, so they don't have to worry about anything other than shopping as they usually do. Let's close with a few thoughts. Number one, I want to paraphrase Paul Edwards, one of the figures in our field. Shoppers are complex creatures. We should not assume that one way of looking at them will give us all the answers. In-the-moment research allows us to focus on people, not on the research itself, and is therefore able to provide a richer understanding of your category. Human memory is fallible. Combined with our cluttered lives outside of the shopping moment, it limits the effectiveness of quant research. In-the-moment research brings out the granularity of what we experience in store. The store is the battlefield of the very, very many competing marketing activities. In-the-moment research, again, can significantly enhance your category management decisions and allow you to stay ahead of the shopper's mind. Finally, the ability of in-the-moment research to capture both the moments of in-store disruptions and emotional connections give you the power to use these levers and change the shopper's behavior. which is ultimately the objective of what you do, because what you as the category want is that when the person is in store and shops for the category, they pick up your product, thus justifying your programs and your investment. Just a few words about the next steps. We're currently working on developing a new approach to using wearables for in-the-moment research. We're quite excited about this. This will be presented by Strategy by my French colleagues during Printemps des Études in Paris in April. Please join our next webinar in a couple of months. We'll go deeper about what we do in terms of wearables. And also, last but not least, we will be present at a couple of shopping events. There's a shopper conference in London next week in Kensington, Wednesday and Thursday, February 10th and 11th, and Printemps des Études in Paris on April 14th, 15th. Please feel free to stop by, say hello, and we'll be very, very happy to talk to you about in-the-moment research and category research in general and answer any of your questions. At this point, I want to thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate you coming, getting up this morning and taking some time off your day. Thank you.